Hi, my name is Andy Guerdat. This is the Go Draft, a series of videos designed to help you elevate your screenwriting to another level, maybe even the level where you get paid to do it. Who am I to think I could teach you this? I'm not a famous screenwriter. I'm not a famous showrunner, though I've done both. What I am is a working writer. I've been a working writer in Hollywood for 45 years. People pay me money and have paid me money for quite some time in order to write stories that will make them millions of dollars, or in the case of Paw Patrol, billions of dollars. I've written about every form of cinematic writing there is to write. I've written movies, I've written TV movies, I've written hour-long dramas, I've written half-hour comedies, I've written animation, I've written plays, I've written songs, pretty much everything there is to write for money in the dramatic art forms I have done. My writing techniques are mostly cinematic, so I'll be referencing a lot of feature films during the course of this video series, but most of what I'm talking about will apply to television as well, or any kind of video series. I'll discuss the distinctions between television and movies later in the series. These are not theories that I'm going to be discussing. They are techniques that I use, have used, continue to use. I'm still a working writer. I'm going as a creative consultant to Disney every week. If you don't agree with my techniques, don't use them. If you don't like my approach, don't use it. I'm not really that concerned about that. The world doesn't need more screenwriters, it needs better movies. I'm not trying to sell you a book, and I'm not trying to sell you a seat in a seminar. I just want to see better movies. If you're like most people these days, you might probably learn much of what you know about filmmaking from one of those, from watching YouTube and TikTok and Instagram. And which doesn't necessarily mean it's bad work you're looking at. Some of it's good, but a lot of it isn't. You're probably learning a lot of filmmaking technique from people who don't know what they're doing. And good and bad in this context is kind of a subjective terms. Aren't very helpful to us. What I really mean is effective, that your work can be more effective than it is. You may very well be doing work that's pretty darn good, but it needs something to get to the next level. It isn't quite up to what you know it could be, what you wish it were when you picture it in your head. And that's probably where I can help you. You probably know more about cameras and editing software than I do. I would hope so. But none of that matters. Most projects of any kind, whether you're talking about a big multi-million-dollar tentpole movie or a little indie film or just a little video series shot on your iPhone, most projects fall down at the writing stage. Almost all of them are. The problems stem from the writing, not from the filmmaking itself, the actual process of the filmmaking. We're the first filmmakers. We writers, screenwriters, television writers, we're the first filmmakers. People who don't know how movies are made assume that acting is the most important element. People who don't know how movies are made but think they do assume that directing is the most important element, and people who actually make movies know that the script is everything. Woody Allen said nobody ever made a good movie from a bad script, and he would know. He made about 6 great films, another 20 really, really good ones, and about 20 really bad ones. Years ago, I was working with a movie producer named Joe Azan, old-time Hollywood guy. Didn't win a lot of Academy Awards. He probably never won one, but he got movies made. And we're sitting in his office at Fox, working on some screenplay. And he gets a call from his on-set producer, because he had a film in production. He often did. And there was some problem on the set. The actor didn't want to say a line, whatever it was. And he gives the guy some sage counsel, finally hangs up, and he sighs, and he turns to me and he says, I have to have stars to get my movies made. And I have to have star directors to get my movies made. But what you guys do, meaning screenwriters, is 10 times more important. And you should be paid 10 times more than you're getting paid. And if you ever tell anybody I said that, I'll deny that I said it. He's dead now, so I can say it. Film is an extraordinarily complex undertaking. A friend of mine, filmmaker, said one of the reasons film has such power is it combines all the elements of the great human art forms. It has narrative, like a stage play or a novel. It has painting, in a sense, because each shot is composed as a color palette. It has dance, even if it's not a musical. The choreography of the camera and the actors blocking is a kind of dance. It has music and the score. It has fashion and the costumes and so on. Because it's so complex, because you've got to get all those department heads on board and everybody working under them has to get on board. You're trying to get 80 people to paint the Mona Lisa. You better know what the Mona Lisa looks like. You need a strong script to pull everybody through it. A script is not a blueprint for a film, as you may have heard. If you're like me, unless you're an architect or an engineer, you look at a blueprint, you see what I see, which is a white piece of paper with blue lines on it. I can't tell if it's a home or an office building. What we're really doing is the artist's rendering of that building. A script is an artist's rendering, so to speak, of the film to be. We have to get everybody to see it. Will it change from the script to the finished product? Of course it will, just as the artist's rendering of that building, whatever it might be, a museum or a home, is going to change to some degree from the artist's rendering to the finished product, of course. But first, everybody has to see it. And they have to, if possible, get jazzed by it. And that's a lot of what you're doing as a screenwriter, is trying to make somebody else excited by your vision. That's your task. Because filmmaking is so complex, we have to find ways to begin with. Let's cut through the clutter of all the hype and the bad ideas and the big personalities and the bullshit that you're going to deal with. And we do that by shrinking this thing down to its essence.
First principles, Clarice. Simplicity. Read Marcus Aurelius. Of each particular thing, ask, what is it in itself? What is its nature?
So what does it do, this thing we seek? Well, the way I identify and fix the problems with the scripts that cross my desk is by first and foremost figuring out what I can get rid of. Not adding, get rid of. I unravel the script, the story, down to its very essence, to its very core. I don't add because untalented writers can't think of anything to write, so they don't usually write a script. Talented writers don't know when to stop. Professional writers write what's right. To do that, you have to know, first and foremost, what it is we're trying to accomplish. What is it we do? We are in the emotion, manufacturing, and distribution industry. That's what we do. That's why people pay money for us to do it. I could line up the CEOs of every major multi-billion-dollar international media corporation on a seminar stage, and I could ask them all, what does your company do? What do you make? What is your product? And they would all say some version of entertainment. We're in the entertainment industry. Okay, great. And then I'd say, and what is entertainment? And they would say, Star Wars? Yeah, Star Wars is entertaining to most people, but so is Brokeback Mountain to millions of people. So is The Passion of the Christ. So is Bridesmaids. So are the Saw movies. So was Everything Everywhere All at Once. So was La La Land. So was Oppenheimer. What do those things all have in common that make them entertaining? Are they all funny? No. Are they all scary? No. Are they all moving? No. Are they all visually spectacular? No. What they all have in common is they elicit an emotion. They make us feel something. They make us feel something. Whether it's porn or poetry, the job is to make people feel something. It's just that porn's easier than poetry. Now, I can almost hear people saying, get to the important stuff, how you write a script. Well, this is the important stuff because this is where most people fall down, whether it's a filmmaker or a film executive, this is where they fall apart. They don't know what their product is, and so they make incredibly stupid decisions as they flounder around trying to guess what will make people go to a movie or watch a television show. That's why you see so many things that make you wonder, how in the name of God did anyone greenlight this piece of crap? And it's because they made the decisions, both the filmmakers and the executives sometimes, almost always the executives, sometimes the filmmakers, made the decision based on what the latest trend was. Oh, horror's in. Everything's got to be horror. No, 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 no. It's superheroes, aspiration, wish fulfillment. Yeah, that's the ticket. No, it needs to be woke. No, it needs to be not woke. Oh, that actress just had a big hit movie. Put her in it, whether she's right for the part or not. That kid just directed a hit movie. Make him the director. It's a series of incorrect decisions based on the fact that they don't know what they do for a living. They don't know what their product is. They don't know they're supposed to be making people feel something. Disney paid $4 billion for Marvel a few years ago. And when they did, they might as well have raised a white flag over Hollywood that said, we have absolutely no idea what we're doing. We don't know what a good story is. We don't know what we're trying to accomplish here. All we know is people seem to like stories with guys wearing capes, so we'll give you $6 billion, $4 billion for this company of yours that has the rights to a lot of characters who wear capes. A few years later, they paid another $4 billion for the rights to Star Wars, to buy Lucasfilm and with it the rights to Star Wars. They could have had Star Wars, the entire property, the entire franchise, back in the early 70s for a $5,000 option. And Lucas was shopping it all over town in treatment form. Why didn't they do it? Or any of the other studios were also offered the project? Because they couldn't read it and feel the excitement behind it, feel that it was different, that it was special, feel that it was worth a $5,000 option to see if this kid can pull it off, because this feels special. They couldn't do it. So it cost them $4 billion. That's a fairly expensive business decision. It's as if we worked for a patio furniture company and the CEO didn't know what a table was. It's like, is that the thing people sit on? No, that's a chair, Bob. That's what we're dealing with. When I talk about emotion, what I'm really talking about now is not expressing emotion, but rather evoking emotion, which is a very different task. If you write down your innermost thoughts and feelings on a piece of paper, that's therapy. If you write down your innermost thoughts and feelings on a piece of paper so somebody else can read it and feel what you're feeling, that's art, or at least has the possibility of becoming art. Stephen Sondheim said, art is craft. It is not inspiration. Everybody feels inspired. Everybody. You just lost your lover. You just found true love. Your mom died. You're so full of emotions. You just want to write it, put it on a piece of paper. That's great. Feel free to do that. But I don't want to see your therapy session, and you don't want to see mine. And I certainly don't want to pay to see your therapy session. If you want to see true inspiration, true passion, go to a homeless encampment or to a mental hospital, and you're going to see somebody sooner or later walking around raging, screaming, cursing, crying, laughing at thin air. They're consumed with emotion. They have feelings that are probably 10 times more powerful than anything you and I are feeling. They just don't have the craft to put it into words. That's your job. Everyone feels what you do. Everyone does. They just don't necessarily have the ability to put it into a form that will make other people feel what you're feeling, and to be moved by it and touched by it and grow by it and pay money to have that experience. The act of writing itself, just like any other art form, sculpting or painting or composing, but the act of writing itself suggests you want to communicate. So if your attitude is, I don't care whether anybody gets it or not, then don't even bother writing it down. Just think it and leave the rest of us out of it. That's the purpose of a story, to communicate emotion. But what is a story? Next.
Pronto, gosh. Basta look at Jiminy to do. Uta Millennium Falcon at Jiminy Cloud City.
Storytelling is dispensing information to felicitous effect. For example, I live in Sherman Oaks in the foothills of the Santa Monica Mountains, and I go for a walk every morning. And the Hollywood Hills are developed, but there's little woodsy patches. And so a few weeks ago, I'm walking and I see in the roadway far up ahead, something is lying in the road. And it's kind of dark, and it's got 3 nubs projecting upward. And I think, oh no, this does not look good. But I keep walking. I get a little closer and I see that whatever this thing is, the skin has split in a wide gash. And now I'm really not looking forward to seeing what this is. But what am I going to do? I'm a grown man. I'm not going to turn around and walk back. I'll keep walking. And I do. And I get almost on top of it and I look down and I see that it's a log. A log has somehow fallen into the road and the nubs were 3 broken branches projecting upward and the split skin was the bark. And I felt embarrassed because it's kind of silly having imagined this horrible thing, but also a little ashamed that I had, somewhere in the back of my mind, I had jumped to the conclusion. I had wanted, in fact, on some level, for it to be a dead animal. Now, I just told you a story. I created a protagonist, me. I forced you to empathize with me by putting you in my head. I stepped out the action to create some suspense. I gave you a twist, and I gave you a denouement, which is a sense of what this might have meant to me and maybe to you. Okay, now, somebody who's not a storyteller by nature, same thing happens to them. Could have, probably may have that very day. I don't know. And they go to the office or they go to the dinner table, whatever, and they say, oh, the weirdest thing happened to me. I'm walking up in the hills and I saw a log in the road that looked like a dead dog. Now, that's accurate. That's correct. It's concise. It's just not effective if your intent is to elicit some emotion from someone. That is the distinction. Do you want to be efficient or do you want to be effective? We're storytellers. I think it's helpful sometimes to not even use the word screenwriter or filmmaker even. Just say storyteller, because those other words carry with them the trappings in our minds of other things like respect. Good luck with that. Money, which is possible. A nice study with books and movie posters. And yes, I have those things. But I have those things because I'm an effective storyteller. My philosophy is what I call organic storytelling. And I can't think of a better term for it. That's how I use that. And the best way to think of it is this. We're the descendants of Og the caveman, sitting around a campfire telling the other people in the tribe a story about the day's bison hunt and how Glorn, looked like he was going to get trampled by the bison, but he got this spear under it and stabbed it, and the bison fell over, and we thought Glorn was dead, but lo and behold, he crawled out from under it. Hooray, isn't Glorn great? And everybody in the tribe cheers, and maybe if we're lucky, they throw us a piece of raw meat for having told a good story. That's who we are. That's organic storytelling, because Og never read a screenwriting book. He or she just figured it out. Eventually, they may have taken a couple of clocks to the head if they told a bad story, but they figured it out. This works better than that. This is more effective than that. Organic storytelling. In the real world, in the non-Og world, when I was a young man wanting to be a screenwriter, I lived in Birmingham, Alabama in the 1970s. That's about as far removed culturally from Hollywood as you can possibly get. There were no screenwriting books. It was impossible to get a copy of a screenplay. Where would you get it? There was no internet. So I just sort of figured out from watching a lot of movies, and I managed to get something that just enough so I could see what a script was supposed to look like, right? With the dialogue centered and fade in and all that stuff. And I watched a lot of movies. I knew what I liked. I knew what kind of seemed to work, and I had a good idea, I thought, for a story, and I just started to sort of, on my own, clumsily structure it. Now, in the meantime, I moved to Los Angeles. I went to a film school so then I could compare my work, which I had finished by the time I left Birmingham, with other people who were in the same position or even with professionals. And I figured out what I did wrong. And of course, I had to do a lot of rewriting. The movie eventually wound up getting made years later. But here's the thing. Fundamentally, structurally, it was basically right. It had 3 acts. It had a midpoint. It had an inciting incident. It had all that stuff. I didn't know what to call them. I was doing it instinctively and based on trial and error and learning from what other people had done before me, but I did it. It was instinctive. Screenwriting is a lot like sex in this regard. Most of us can't do it at all if we don't feel a certain amount of passion, but we need to keep checking in with our partner periodically, the partner in this disgusting metaphor being the audience. You need to develop what I call an audience antenna. That's the first step toward organic storytelling. Audience antenna simply means having a little tuning fork there that says, I think if I do this, they'll feel that. I think if I make this choice, how will the audience react? I think they're going to react this way. And keeping tabs with the audience throughout the process. How will they react? Oh yeah, if I reveal this information here, they'll be shocked. But do I want them to be shocked? Maybe I want to withhold it and play the suspense a little longer. This is a really funny joke. Is it a right spot for a joke? They may laugh, but that may reduce the tension, or maybe there's too much tension, and I want them to release it with a joke here. It's an audience antenna. When I first came out here, I didn't intend to be a sitcom writer, producer, but one thing led to another, and I found myself doing a lot of sitcom writing and sitcom producing. And most of them were multi-camera sitcoms. If you don't know what multi-camera means, it just means it's the episode is performed like a play with 4 cameras running simultaneously, recording the action, and there's a live studio audience behind the cameras responding to it. As a result, I was very fortunate. I got to have typical 20 episode season was 22 episodes, so I did it for about 20 years. I had a lot of episodes that I wrote or that I worked on or that other people worked on, that I had followed their progress, and I got to see them performed in front of a live audience. So you learn pretty quickly that works, that doesn't work so well. If you can't have that experience, of course, few people can. A stand-up comedian must develop the same kind of audience antenna. An actor performing a live play develops an audience antenna. If you can't do any of those things, and for lots of reasons people can't, at the very least, what I advise you to do is to place yourself mentally, as you're writing, in the theater seat with the audience, or a sofa with the audience. How would you feel if you saw what you just wrote on a screen? How would you feel? Think of yourself as an audience member, not as a frustrated filmmaker or a frustrated screenwriter. How would you feel as an audience member? It will force you to write not what you always wanted to write, but what you always wanted to see. Remember our goal: make the audience feel something. The truth is, if you don't write that way, if you write from the perspective of most screenwriting how-to books, it's backwards. Look at it this way. This is incredibly simplistic psychologically, but the right brain is roughly responsible for our emotions, for our feelings, our love, our lust, our fear, all that stuff, emotional intelligence. The left brain is the analytical part of the brain. I'm telling you to start with the right brain. What do you feel? Write it, then analyze it with the left brain. Feel it, write it, analyze it. The how-to books are telling you to do it backwards. They're telling you to start with a template that they've created for you, an analytical template based on what other movies have done in the past that has been successful. And then you just plug in your little feelings things, and ta-da, you got yourself a hit screenplay. And I am telling you, it does not work, or almost never works. It's backwards, because the audience already went home. I can tell, or actually smell, a screenplay written to the constraints of those templates, because the characters are doing things that make no sense. No, why would anyone do that? Wait, what? Why are we here? That doesn't make any sense, huh? I didn't want to see that. As an audience member, I wanted to go over here and explore this thing. And when I have the opportunity to question the writer who wrote the screenplay, they almost always say, well, the template I'm following says by page 12, I have to be here. Page 32, I need to be doing this. The character should always do blank at the midpoint. Yeah, well, nobody wants to see it, so it doesn't really matter. The audience is going to have an emotional experience. They're not going to watch a properly written screenplay. What you're trying to do is metaphorically, let's say you have a 90-page script. In the old days, you do this. Now you do this. The point is you want that reader to keep turning pages. You want them to open up the screenplay, read the first page, and say, wow, that's a cool image. Wow, that's a great joke. Oh, wow, there's an even better one. Oh, that's really interesting. What a great character. Boy, I didn't see that twist coming. And they keep doing that until they finally get to the end of the script and they go, whoa, that was cool. 90 wows and a whoa. That's what you're trying to get to. And you don't do that when you start with the left brain. When you start with the analytical part of the brain, you got to start with the emotional part of the brain. I spent most of my adult life in writers' rooms. I still go to a writer's room 2 or 3 times a week. And when we're breaking a story or punching a script or whatever, the word that you hear over and over and over constantly is feel. That doesn't feel right. We're looking up at the monitor or the whiteboard, whatever it might be. That doesn't feel, that beat doesn't feel like it belongs there. That feels off point. That joke doesn't feel right. I think it feels like we revealed that information too soon, or whatever it might be. They're instinctively writing organically. Most of them have been well trained, but they're not approaching it from that screenwriting handbook manner. They're approaching it organically. The left brain guys, the rule book guys, are going to tell you to analyze a bunch of movies, or actually, I've done it for you so you don't have to bother. Identify what they all have in common, and then just do what all those other people did. You just add some feelings. That's not how to do it. They're not the 3 most important words. Those come later. 3 most important words in screenwriting. I'm creating suspense now. But 3 of the most important words in screenwriting are form follows function. The story structure that you choose is determined by your intent. The story structure, the form, follows your intent, your function. What do you want the audience to feel? Give you some examples. In 1960, Joseph Stefano and Alfred Hitchcock sat down to write the scariest movie ever made. That was their intent. They publicly said it. We're going to write the scariest movie ever made. How do we go about doing that? What choices should we make? Well, they finally stumbled, both of them somehow, on the idea, what if we killed the protagonist at the end of Act 1? Make the audience invest in their journey just like we would with any other movie, but at the end of Act 1, we're going to kill her because she happened to cross paths with a psychopath. If we do that, what will the audience feel? What will be their reaction? Audience antenna. And their audience antenna said, oh my God, they're going to go, holy cow, if the lead can get killed, and they even cast a movie star, Janet Leigh, in the role, if she can get killed, anybody can get killed. Who knows what's going to happen next? And they'll be digging their fingernails into their theater seats with suspense and fear. And it worked great. And Psycho was then and may still be the scariest movie ever made. Now fast forward to 20, 30 years later, the Coen brothers have an idea for a movie, and they think, it would be fun, kind of funny and weird, is if we started the story with this unbelievably complex, convoluted, misbegotten, inept crime that goes awry. And then at the end of Act 1, we'll introduce the protagonist, and she'll be kind of a bumbling small-town sheriff who seems like she couldn't possibly figure this thing out, but who knows? What do you know? She's a little smarter than we thought, and bit by bit she starts to pick apart all the clues to figure out what happened. Wouldn't that be fun to watch? And in order to do so, they introduced the protagonist at the end of Act 1. Now, in the case of Psycho, if I took the information of the success of Psycho and I said, therefore, you must always, always kill your protagonist at the end of Act 1, that would be lunacy, right? And likewise, if I said, based on Fargo, because it's so successful, you should always introduce your protagonist at the end of Act 1, that too would be insane. In both cases, Hitchcock and Stefano, the Coen brothers, they structured their story based on what their intent was. Form follows function. They wrote the stories organically. Remember, the audience paid their money to feel something, not to see a properly constructed screenplay. So the rules tended to arise organically over the many decades of trying to figure out how to write movies, but they're not something that you should follow religiously. And you can break them if you know what your intent is and you can guess what the effect on the audience is likely to be. Another way to look at the rules of screenwriting is this. They're best used when your script doesn't work. If not, don't start with the rules. If the script doesn't work, then go back and apply the rules. If you start with the rules, you'll probably never finish your script, to be honest with you, because it's so cumbersome and so clunky to try to, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be where by page what? Well, that doesn't fit what I had in mind. And even if you do finish it, it'll probably stink and you'll just have to strip it back down to its essence and start all over. So you have a good idea for a movie. How do you start to structure it?